Have you ever heard this saying, beware of Greeks bearing gifts? This timeless warning traces its roots back to one of the most legendary tales of deception in history, the story of the Trojan Horse. For 10 long years, the mighty walls of Troy stood defiant against the Achaean army. Heroes clashed, gods intervened, but the city remained unconquered. It seemed like an unbreakable stalemate. But then, the Greeks did something completely unexpected. They packed up their camp, boarded their ships, and appeared to sail away, leaving behind a single, colossal offering, a magnificent wooden horse. What was this strange gift? Was it a surrender offering to the gods, a sign of defeat? Or was it something far more sinister? Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this ancient mystery. We'll explore the myth, analyze the brilliant strategy behind it, and delve into the art of deception that turned the tide of the Trojan War. This isn't just a story about a big wooden horse. It's a masterclass in psychological warfare that has echoed through the ages. To truly understand the genius of the Trojan horse, we need to set the scene. The Trojan War, as famously chronicled in Homer's Iliad, was a brutal, decade-long siege. The Achaeans, or Greeks, had brought an immense army to the shores of Troy to reclaim Helen, the wife of King Menelaus, who had eloped with the Trojan prince, Paris. The war saw legendary warriors like Achilles and Hector fight and fall. Yet, despite the Greeks' military might, Troy's formidable walls were impenetrable. Direct assault had failed time and time again. The Greek army was exhausted, their morale was plummeting, and they were desperate for a way to end the war. This is where Odysseus, the clever king of Ithaca, steps into the spotlight. Known for his cunning and strategic mind, Odysseus realized that brute force wouldn't win this war. They needed to outthink the Trojans, not overpower them. The plan he devised was audacious, risky, and utterly brilliant. It relied not on swords or spears, but on exploiting the enemy's psychology, their beliefs, and their pride. The plan was simple in concept, yet complex in execution. The Greeks would construct a giant, hollow wooden horse. A select group of their finest warriors, led by Odysseus himself, would hide inside its belly. The rest of the Greek army would pretend to abandon the siege, sailing their ships just out of sight, hiding behind a nearby island. They would leave one man behind, a soldier named Sinon, to play the role of a deserter. Sinon's mission was crucial. He had to convince the Trojans to bring the horse inside their city walls. Think about the sheer audacity of this plan. It required incredible craftsmanship to build the horse, immense bravery from the men hiding inside, and an Oscar-worthy performance from their man on the outside. Everything had to go perfectly. If even one part of the deception failed, the men inside the horse would be trapped and slaughtered, and the war would be lost for good. So, the Trojans wake up one morning to an eerie silence. The sprawling Greek camp is gone. The beach is empty, save for this single, enormous wooden horse standing before their gates. Imagine their confusion, their hope, their suspicion. They cautiously approach the strange structure. What is it? Why is it here? Just then, they find Sinon, who plays his part to perfection. He tells a convincing tale of woe, claiming he had angered Odysseus and was left behind to be sacrificed. He weaves a story that the horse is an offering to the goddess Athena, built to an immense size, specifically so the Trojans couldn't bring it into their city. Why? Because, Sinon claims, if the Trojans were to possess the horse, it would grant them Athena's protection and make Troy invincible. He was playing directly into their pride and their piety. He made the horse not just a gift, but a prize, a symbol of their victory and divine favor. Now, not everyone in Troy was convinced. The priest, Laocoon, famously warned, "I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts." To prove his point, he hurled a spear into the horse's side, and the sound of clanging armor from within was supposedly heard. But at that moment, a seemingly divine intervention occurred. 2 giant sea serpents emerged from the ocean and devoured Laocoon and his 2 sons. To the terrified Trojans, this was a clear sign. Laocoon had offended the gods by disrespecting the sacred offering. His warning was dismissed as sacrilege. Another voice of reason was the princess Cassandra, who was cursed with the gift of prophecy that no one would ever believe. She too foretold the city's doom, but her frantic warnings were ignored as madness. The combination of Sinan's masterful manipulation and the apparent divine sign sealed Troy's fate. Overjoyed and convinced of their victory, the Trojans broke down a section of their own impenetrable walls to drag the colossal horse inside. That night, Troy celebrated. They feasted, they drank, they rejoiced in the end of a 10-year war. The entire city, exhausted and ecstatic, finally let its guard down and fell into a deep, drunken sleep. This was the moment the Greeks had been waiting for. Under the cover of darkness, Sinon released the latch. Odysseus and his elite soldiers climbed out of the horse's belly. They were the key that would unlock the city from within. They silently moved through the streets, killing the sentries and opening the main gates of Troy. At the same time, the main Greek fleet, which had been hiding, sailed back to shore. The entire Achaean army poured into the unsuspecting city. What followed was not a battle, but a massacre. The Trojans, caught completely by surprise, were routed. The city that had stood strong for a decade fell in a single night. The deception was complete. The Trojan War was finally over, not with a heroic clash of armies, but with a whisper in the dark. So, was the Trojan horse real? Historically, there's no definitive archaeological evidence of a giant wooden horse. Most historians today believe that the story is likely a metaphor or a poetic exaggeration. The horse could have been a type of siege engine, perhaps a large, covered battering ram that was named after an animal, a common practice in the ancient world. Or perhaps the story symbolizes an earthquake that breached Troy's walls, as the god Poseidon, who was associated with both horses and earthquakes, was against the Trojans. Another theory is that the horse was simply the ship that carried the hidden soldiers, or that the symbol of a horse was inscribed on the city gates by the conquerors. But whether it was a literal wooden horse or a symbol for something else, the strategic lesson remains the same. The story of the Trojan horse is the ultimate example of asymmetric warfare, where a weaker or stalemated force uses unconventional tactics to defeat a stronger, fortified enemy. The brilliance of the Trojan horse strategy lies in its deep understanding of human nature. Odysseus didn't just build a clever hiding spot. He orchestrated a full-blown psychological operation. He exploited the Trojans' relief after a long war, their religious beliefs, their pride, and their greed. He created a narrative so compelling that they willingly brought the instrument of their own destruction inside their defenses. This is the core of deception in warfare, making your enemy do what you want them to do, while they believe it's their own idea. It's about turning their strengths, their strong walls, their piety, into critical vulnerabilities. The Trojan horse wasn't just wood and nails. It was a carefully constructed lie that the Trojans were desperate to believe. The legacy of the Trojan horse is immense. The term Trojan horse itself has become a part of our everyday language, referring to any trick or strategy that causes a target to invite a foe into a securely protected bastion or place. In the digital age, we talk about Trojan horse viruses, malicious computer programs that disguise themselves as useful software to gain access to our systems. In business, a Trojan horse strategy might involve a company making a seemingly attractive offer that contains hidden disadvantages. The story has been retold countless times in literature, art, and film, a testament to its enduring power as a cautionary tale and a masterclass in strategy. It reminds us that the greatest vulnerabilities are often not in our walls, but in our minds. It teaches us to be critical, to question things that seem too good to be true, and to always beware of Greeks bearing gifts. The tale of Troy's fall is a timeless lesson in vigilance and the art of deception. It shows that victory doesn't always go to the strongest, but often to the cleverest. Odysseus and his wooden horse demonstrate that a brilliant idea, executed with precision and a deep understanding of the enemy, can overcome even the most insurmountable obstacles. It's a story that blurs the line between myth and history, but its strategic wisdom is as real and relevant today as it was thousands of years ago. It forces us to consider that sometimes the biggest threats don't announce themselves with a roar, but arrive silently, disguised as a gift. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into ancient strategy, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more stories from history. See you next time.